Live streamed. Oh man, look at us with our fancy cameras and
All right.
traditionally American faces.
Fantastic. Are we up? I think we are live. I'm just going to double check one thing here.
Collin, I think you promised you were going to do a dance as soon as we went live. Is that?
I did do a promise. It does look like I also activated the wrong stream somehow. So I think there's nobody here.
Okay.
Let's try this one more time.
Okay.
And if we are live, people, let us know. I apologize if we're just goofing.
Oh yeah, let's see if there's a chat.
Yeah, so it's going to the wrong channel. What's going on? Create demand. Okay. This one should be live now. All right, everybody, stick with us just one more minute here. We'll get it live and going. We used to do this with like Streamlabs or OBS. And it worked. It was much more difficult to set up, but it was much more consistent in how it went. Yeah. Okay. We are live now on the correct one. Apologize for everybody who is joining in shortly. All right, I see us going. Rand, thank you so much for joining us today, and I appreciate you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah. All right. All right. So today, everybody, we are talking about how to create and capture demand. This is going to be a little bit of a back and forth between my co-host today, Rand Fishkin. You might remember him from, or you might know him from currently Spark Toro. My opinion, one of my favorite places to go as a sales development strategist to figure out where I can find my audience. I know this is not why Rand designed the tool. He built it for marketers doing good marketing things, but I'm on the dark side and I like the cold email, cold reaching out to prospects side, which is probably making Rand feel a little bit dirty. So I won't share too much, but we've got a couple of tactics that are going to combine the two at the end. And so Rand is going to lead off with how to create demand. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how to use sales development to capture demand. With that said, I'm going to start sharing the presentation here. So everybody sit tight and we're going to get into it. Rand, I'm going to pass you presenter control really shortly here.
Fantastic. And Collin, if folks want, can they use the chat inside Zoom or in YouTube?
On YouTube here. Yeah. So if you're on YouTube, okay. I'll keep an eye out on the chat and feel free to throw your questions there.
All right. Killer. Yeah. Excellent.
All right, Rand.
And are we making this presentation available to folks in a recorded version after?
Absolutely.
I've never, ever run a webinar where that's not the number one question.
Fair enough.
So actually, you know what? It's a really good sign if people ask that question halfway through, because that means they're liking what they hear.
Exactly.
Awesome. All right. So do I have control of this?
You should.
Excellent. Oh, wonderful. Amazing. Well, Collin, I appreciate you and your dark side of the force just as much as marketing. I think that sales often gets a bad rap, but unfairly in many cases. There is plenty of sketchy marketing out there too. So I'm glad we get to do this and combine these two things. And I'm going to move pretty fast, but since the recording will be available, you can watch at whatever speed you like after this is over. So, all right, let's jump in. So SDRs, before the presentation, I asked Collin, what's an SDR? He told sales development rep. Great, excellent. Where can demand come from? All right, I am going to use both some B2B and B2C examples here, but essentially your options for creating demand, new demand that did not previously exist for your product or service is you can serve people who already know about what they need, right? So I search for a Japanese rice donabe in Google, and Google will show me places that will sell them to me. It'll show me resources and links that recommend ones, or I can create awareness that leads to more demand, right? So if I run a donabe reseller, which the woman who pitched this article did, I think it's she runs Just One Cookbook, and Taste kind of picked up and ran with the story, right? They wrote a whole article about this. I subscribed to their email newsletter, so I got this in my inbox. This was the first time I had ever heard of a donabe. I think I'd seen them in Japanese restaurants before. I never knew that I wanted one. And eventually it led me down a path that got me to buy one. So, when you're serving existing demand, there's a bunch of marketing channels and tactics that fit under that. Most SEO, most paid search, most conversion rate optimization, I'd argue almost all, and most comparison marketing, right? So like, hey, let's make a list of all the options to buy this thing or that thing. G2, right, is a good example of that. Creating new demand, most social media fits under this. That's generally not serving existing demand. You're creating awareness about a product, a service, a brand, a piece of content. Most content marketing, especially awareness-focused content, right? And most email marketing is also this. You're taking someone who has subscribed to something, but may not know that they have a demand for the product, and you're trying to nudge them along that journey. Trade shows, direct sales, ABM, freemium, right? All those kinds of things fit into create new demand. And lots of activities straddle both of these. So retargeting, right? A lot of the web advertising you see, sponsorship, brand marketing. Okay, we've got the sense, create new demand, serve existing demand. My argument here at creating new demand is often more powerful than serving existing demand. But I'm going to show you through two examples, one in B2B, one in B2C. So this is Izon's business aviation software platform. I'm not personally in aviation. I don't actually know much about this field, but I did see them doing some pretty genius stuff actually through Spark Toro, right? We sort of monitor lots of data out there in the web. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting, right? They have this Izon technology platform, which helps folks in aviation, especially at small and medium-sized regional airports, manage their flight control and all that kind of stuff. And you can see there's no demand, right? No one's searching for any of these terms: aviation fleet software, business aviation tools, BizAv software. That's kind of the industry term for it. Yeah, okay, it's not there. But Collins went out and created demand, right? They went to essentially all of these places, these sources of influence in their field, and they created demand by getting those places to cover their launch, right? And getting them to write about the problems that they were solving and the solution they created and all that kind of stuff. This is, but you may be familiar with the product formerly known as Mountain Dew. I believe it is now pronounced Mountain Dew. They have removed all the vowels and left some of the consonants. I don't know. They just wanted less letters. This is my wife. I think we are in rural Florida, a very interesting gas station. Actually, the person who was working there was great. And Geraldine, as part of her work, she's a food writer and an author. Her new book is coming out. I think there's a chapter on Mountain Dew in there. So we're trying all the flavors of Mountain Dew. And Mountain Dew has had a lot of success over the last few years, like really grown and maintained their brand, even through COVID. You can see the search volume, not particularly high, but there's plenty of demand, right? There's stuff out there, like if you search for Mountain Dew or Mountain Dew. But interestingly, right, look at that. Look at that curve. Look at that demand creation that Mountain Dew has done, especially over the last 2 years. Incredibly impressive. And it's regional, highly regional. So you can see that in Tennessee and West Virginia in particular, there's a huge amount of demand for Mountain Dew. And so Mountain Dew, very smart, used their audience research data about their geographic sort of bias and where demand is to launch a mountain outpost in the Tennessee mountains, which apparently the original Mountain Dew, which was like a beverage mixer that you were supposed to combine with bourbon back in the 1800s. This was like the source of the original Dew. Anyway, they opened up an outpost there with all sorts of Mountain Dew bro type of activities. And they're serving their demand and their audience by understanding what their customers want. So I like to use this shorthand version, of the influence map. And it's essentially this idea of mapping out your customers' journey. So from problem discovery to brand awareness to education, solution seeking, and where they go, where your audience goes, what they pay attention to, what they find compelling in each of these phases. So if your problem is in problem discovery, well, why don't be spending a bunch of your marketing and sales energy in further education, right? And similarly, the inverse. One of the ways to tell where this opportunity is happening and where your demand creation problem exists is to look at branded versus unbranded search. So, I'm historically an SEO guy. I used to run a company called Moz, and Airbnb presents a really nice, clean example of this. So there's the chart for Airbnb searches versus vacation rental searches. And back here, when Airbnb launched 2009, they needed brand awareness. You see, like that red line is way bigger than the blue line. But by 2013, they're in problem discovery phase. They need people to understand not, hey, if you need a vacation rental, you should go to Airbnb, but what's a vacation rental? Why would I prefer that over a hotel? Why should I go use the service that Airbnb might be? And today, almost everyone knows what Airbnb and vacation rentals are, right? They have no more problem discovery issues. What they have is further education and solution seeking. They're essentially trying to convince people who are considering alternatives that already include their product and their brand to make that decision. So you as a marketer or as a founder, as a leader, as a CMO, as a salesperson, as a chief sales officer, chief revenue officer, you should be thinking about how these channels and tactics align, right? If we're in problem discovery phase, we need to make different kinds of investments than brand awareness or further education or solution seeking. And you're welcome to use this map, but the concept might contain different tactics depending on who you are and what you are doing. Personally, my favorite demand creation strategy runs like this. Oh, here's Salsa Matcha, another one from Taste. You can tell I'm a big fan of their newsletter. So how come I ordered Salsa Matcha? I actually ordered more. It's sitting in my fridge now. So I've subscribed to Taste for 2 years, right? I'm familiar with them. I subscribe to them particularly because they send me stuff like Japanese rice donabes and salsa matcha, right? Stuff that I like. And their past recommendations have always been solid for me. When I order stuff or try stuff or go to a restaurant they recommend, I have a good experience. And they have no vested interest, right? So they're impartial. I can trust them. They have no reason to choose this fiery Mexican condiment over another fiery Turkish condiment or another brand of salsa matcha. Great, right? Like they're impartial, I can trust them. And it's already in my inbox, right? So high availability. This is my argument. People, publications, podcasts, videos, webinars, right, that fit these criteria. Familiar to your audience, trusted, liked, perceived as impartial, and easily available. That's the best marketing opportunities you're going to find, full stop. That's it. If you can get in front of sources like this, you can get your audience's sources of influence to amplify you and your brand. Man, beautiful. Criteria I don't care about. Social media followers, don't care. Third-party estimates of traffic, Taste, their website has very little traffic. They just have a lot of email subscribers who are in exactly the right demo for those products. Domain authority, I know I created it at Moz. I admit to making some potential mistakes there, but yeah, where they rank in Google, so what? Don't care. IDGAF. you're familiar with this acronym. I don't gamble against fallacious metrics. That's right, people. So my argument here, right? An editorial endorsement from a publication, a source of influence that reaches your audience, is trusted by them, is liked by them. That's the most valuable marketing you can get. I'll show you briefly how you can uncover some of these. I'm going to show you in SparkToro. There's other tools. I'll show those too. So I don't want to be super SparkToro biased, but right. So I can see that people whose profile includes the word privacy advocate, that they visit and engage with these websites: Bleeping Computer, Threat Post, the Hacker News, EFF. I'm not super familiar with this field. Well, I guess I am now, but this is the data, right? Of 518 profiles that contain it, 11% shared or engaged with Threat Post in the past 90 days. Boom. I can take Threat Post and I can plug it into SparkToro or SimilarWeb. This is actually the free version of SimilarWeb. I can't believe they give this away for free. It's really great. They'll give you somewhere between 4 and 8 websites that are visited by the same people who visit this site. Dope. Like, just amazing, right? There's the SparkToro version of that, right? Showing you a list of those and the percents. Social accounts, same thing. 26% of privacy advocates engage with or follow Brian Krebs. That's my man. That's the guy I want to get in front of. I've actually seen his name in some security publications, right? So I'm like, okay, that's who I want to amplify me, talk about me. You take that one social account, you go to Brian Krebs's Twitter profile, for example, and Twitter will show you people who are also followed by him, a few. You go to his LinkedIn, and LinkedIn will show you other people that are followed by and engaged with by and replied to by people who follow him. SparkToro will do the same thing, sort of combining a bunch of social accounts, and bam, Swift on security, Threat Post is in there, Kevin Mitnick, sure, right, back in the day. Podcasts, same story, no surprise. There's Threat Post, Technology Pill, Troy Hunt, who was mentioned in the social accounts, YouTube channels. All right, this is gold. I'm finding the sources of influence that, similar to taste for salsa macho or rice donabes, match Threat Post's or the security field's interests. Other tools you could try. This is BuzzSumo, which I'm a subscriber to. I like very much. They have a lot of cool audience research. You can also go to their parent company, Brandwatch, if you have kind of enterprise budget, and do that. Good affinity scores and affinity data from a bunch of stuff. This one is Helixa.ai and Audience. It's like audience, but with an S. I'm not exactly 100% sure on the pronunciation, but also good tools that can do that kind of stuff. My argument, you use these audience research tools, you can expand beyond just Facebook and Google ads for your demand creation. This is our flywheel. This is kind of how we do it at SparkToro. We find sources that reach our audience. We provide, hopefully, unique value that earns their attention. We try and wow that audience and then bring them to our site, right? And we do that because SparkToro basically uses a model of freemium rather than free trial. My old company, Moz, was free trial. Like, you had to put in a credit card, sign up. But we do the freemium model, which essentially sign up for a forever free account. You play with it as much as you want. And then, like, oftentimes it's 6, 9, 12 months later, somebody finally signs up for an account. And we try and turn their audience into our audience. And this flywheel might work for you too. So a few examples of this in action. I really, really am impressed by what Check My Ads has done. They've gone from, sort of social media agitation to massive brand in the space by getting in front of all the sources of influence, including antagonistic sources of influence that reach their audience. Packaging Europe, this is a source of influence in a very niche field, essentially the packaging design industry. And here's Rabo Research, which sells data and consulting services to agribusinesses in the EU. And they know that those agribusiness leaders read this publication. So that's where they go. Yeah. American Treasure, Neil Patrick Harris. He created this newsletter, right? It's sort of like Goop, but less vagina candles and more like, here's barware you might be interested in. And Neil Patrick Harris, to launch this, did kind of a media blitz, including, I don't know if he ghost wrote it, he might have written this himself, for Inside Hook, which he knows is read by bartenders who are exactly his audience for this this new newsletter that he's launching. And actually, it's quite a good article on remixing Negronis. I tried a couple of the recipes, pretty solid. Threat post, again, right? Cyber six skill, realizing that threat post reaches a huge percent of their audience. So they do a webinar with them. Joint webinars, turns out, great way to co-market and reach a new audience. A little meta there. All right, so this is the idea, right? That you find the shared value between your brand and the source of influence. If you want a publication to amplify you, you ask yourself, what could I do with them? And then figure out, there's all these different options of things that you could do. That list of blue boxes is infinitely long. It's sort of your job to figure out what is the right one that matches for you. This is what we do at Spark Toro. We do no SEO. I just got my Google Search Console report this morning, Collin, and it's like, yeah, you rank for nothing. You get no search clicks. Fine, other than branded terms. Like we get a lot of branded search for Spark Toro. But this is how we get traffic and signups. Featured on industry podcasts, interviewed on popular YouTube channels, written about in email newsletters and blogs, webinars and events. All right, that's how it works for us. Collin, I'm excited to hear the sales side of this too.
Yeah, I wish we had the license to queue up like the Darth Vader's Emperor's March or whatever it is.
You want me to hum it badly in the background?
Yeah, that'd be great. Because I literally copy and pasted a bunch of brand slides, and I'm trying to illustrate one of the key points, which is that I think SDRs, I know SDRs don't create demand, they find it. And you can look at any people or any group outbound segment that you've targeted, and it is going to show that you're going to reach people in all stages of the buying cycle. Now, generally with sales development, you've got a couple of options. You have the going cold, which is your build a list on Apollo and select your, build out your ICP and your personas and build this huge list. And then hope that if people are, if they're interested, they're going to get back to you. Alternatively, what you can do is you can find demand and then find a way to reach those. Now, historically, you can do this on LinkedIn, but there's a couple of tools I'm going to highlight that enable you to go a little bit cross-platform. And some might consider them gray area. I will consider them, freedom of ability to use social. I think what LinkedIn is doing, or LinkedIn's owned by Microsoft now, and they have fully integrated LinkedIn into their own CRM platform. And so they're allowing all the things we talk about today are pretty much things that you can do if you give Microsoft a whole bunch of money. And so this is more the freedom to use the tool as you like approach, as opposed to like the black hat or gray hat approach. So with outbound, what you're typically doing, if you think about Rand's influence map, you're typically flipping the brand awareness and problem discovery stages, right? You're typically reaching people before they are aware of the problem. And if you were to look at the breakdown of a market, how many, if you're in sales development right now, just pause and think for a second, how many people that I reach are actively looking for a solution? How many replies to an email do you get? And people are like, oh, I was just looking for something. It's probably not going to be that many. I've heard, sources and studies that say it's 5% of the market, which I don't think anybody has any reliable way of getting that data, but let's assume that's true. So if the people that are solution seeking are 5%, what are the other 4 categories? I suspect people that are, brand awareness, problem discovery is, or even before, are probably the largest segments. And so the question is, how do we hack this how do we avoid this if we want to reach buyers and not have to wait for them to become aware of the problem before we can have a conversation with them?
Yeah.
Right. With outbound, we have to kind of identify people ahead of time. We're making a guess. We're making all these assumptions. And then we reach out to them and say, hey, can we, is this interesting to you? So they're aware of the brand before they're aware of the problem, which leads to a lack of engagement. It leads to people not replying to emails. It can even lead to people clicking the dreaded spam and complaints button. And so what we want to do is flip that, or what we can do is flip that on its head with midbound. And so midbound is basically what we're calling using the idea of using outbound sales tactics for marketing, general marketing engagement. And so when we flip it, we identify people that are already talking about the problem space, right? That's the kind of problem discovery. If you think about the use case here, you're going on LinkedIn, you're trying to solve a problem, you're asking people, you're commenting, you might follow a couple of brands or a couple of these sources that Rand has pointed out to earlier, With Midbound, we find those conversations. We want to introduce ourselves. We introduce ourselves not by saying, hey, we solved this problem, but by showing that we're a thoughtful actor in the space. We want to engage, we want to identify these conversations that are happening. We want to engage thoughtfully and then connect with them over social media. We also want to follow them along their buyer's journey so that as they are educating themselves, we have that opportunity to kind of nurture the relationship and share content that might be helpful in their buyer's journey. And finally, when they are ready to solve the problem, we'll already have the relationship. We'll be that person that has been in their inbox or in their socials for 6, 12, 18 months before they had a chance to, before they decided that this is something that they wanted to solve.
Yeah.
Now,
Being brand aware before someone gets to conversion stage, so valuable. Love that.
100%. And with outbound, it's the hardest part to do because you're reaching people over cold email, the phone, cold social. And if you're reaching them before they are problem aware, you're probably, honestly, you're probably not reaching them at all. They're probably the people that are going, yeah, that's not relevant to me.
I mean, it feels like spam.
Totally.
Yeah.
It feels like spam. This isn't relevant to me is the worst thing that somebody can say to an email, because it means our targeting is bad. It means our hypothesis is bad. It means that we have gone through a whole bunch of effort to put something into their inbox or get them to pick up the phone, and they're not the right people. And so instead with Midbound, we can flip that on its head by finding demand. And we can use all of Rand's, the demand that he's created by looking at social conversations or social engagement. We want to find the relevant conversations where people are having discussions about, the merits of, if we're talking about outbound, the merits of this tool or that tool, or how to, should you be using a parallel dialer? Should you be cleaning your list with a bounce detector? We also want to look at our marketing engagement. SDRs, this is a free pile of money for you. Almost every client I've worked with, I've only ran into 5 companies that do this really, really well. 5 SDR teams that really leverage their marketing team's engagement. If I'll offer you the question, who would you rather be calling into? A list of people that have never heard from you, don't recognize your brand, or somebody who downloaded an ebook or commented on one of your LinkedIn posts or followed you on LinkedIn? It's pretty obvious, right? And so what we're doing here is using these cold outbound tactics to reach the marketing engagement, to reach people that have already engaged with us, either brands in the problem space, our own internal marketing team, or trade shows that might be relevant. For example, we go to SaaStr pretty regularly, and I generally find that people there are usually thinking about the go-to-market space. It's not very much a CTO, technical driven, gathering. It's more folks from the startup go-to-market side of things. And so with Midbound, we're using our cold outbound tactics on social marketing and event engagement as a way of kind of identifying people that might already be interested. Now, I want to look at this is a great slide that I stole from Rand and repurposed. So I just want to recap on the Midbound process here. We want to find sources that reach your audience. I wonder where we could do that. If only there was a tool where we could go and identify all of these social media people or social media profiles that are already having conversations that our audience trusts. Then we want to engage thoughtfully with the content. And this is definitely not, hey, we solved this problem, or hey, let me send you a link to a case study. This is using the information that we know about the problem space as salespeople and engaging thoughtfully with content about the problem space. Generally, if you're a salesperson, my thought is you're probably not the expert in the problem space, but you are most definitely the expert on the buying process. Our goal is to help Sherpa people from, base camp to the top of the mountain. And we do that journey over and over and over and over again. It doesn't necessarily make us problem space experts, but it eventually gets us pretty close. But at the very least, you can point out like, hey, over there, see on the other side of that ridge, definitely want to make sure that you stay away from that side because it can be a little bit icy. Or if you are going to go, make sure you bring this equipment. Right? We know the process, we know the journey that people go through. And so these are some ideas for engaging thoughtfully with the content or with people's comments. Then we want to connect with the audience, and you can connect with them on LinkedIn, but we also want to connect with them over email because as every marketer knows, attention is great. Being able to command their attention by having their email address is a whole lot more helpful. We also want to keep the conversation alive. The midbound process is not the inbound process. With the inbound process, you're generally going to have people that have a problem. They have decided, they have some motivation because they've decided to do something about it. That's why they inbounded to you. They filled out a lead, they reached out, they've asked, hey, I want to do something. With midbound, you're still reaching people generally, closer to being ready to solve the problem, but they're not going to be ready to buy today. So we've got to find ways to keep the conversation alive. And this is generally sharing content, asking questions, and finding ways to be helpful. And then when we are ready, when we have built the relationship, we have kept it alive, ask about the priorities. Hey, we help with this. Is this something that's relevant to you right now? This is the way that we've been doing it at Predictable Revenue. We get, I don't know the exact stats off the top of my head, but I've got a couple that I can share with you, and a compare and contrast of two campaigns that we've ran recently that compare the two approaches. So let's take a look at cold. Start with a list. Now, this isn't an actual campaign. This is the Collins Aerospace. I just built the list of like people in the av space, or would you call it the Aero Av?
Yeah.
AvNav.
BizAv is, I think, the term, business aviation software.
There we go. Okay. So I looked on their social. I came up with I noticed a lot of the people were in flight operations, and I thought, okay, maybe that's the target demographic. And so I filtered it down to people in I think it was people in the United States. No, worldwide, 10,800 people. So of the 10,800 people,
this is from LinkedIn, you mean?
This is actually an Apollo search, but I took the profile and I did some things to sort it out. And I found that flight operations was a keyword of the job titles that were most frequently engaging with the content, and they looked like they might be potential buyers.
I know I'm super curious now. I have to check in Spark Toro how many flight operations folks we have. Yeah, okay, 31,000. So similar. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So, you're only getting, and this is Apollo. Their data is very good, but it's not going to give you everything and everybody. Going on LinkedIn is absolutely going to be better. But there's advantages and disadvantages. We can get a little bit into that later. But with cold outbound, you're taking these 11,000 people and you're saying, I'm assuming you're all in the same situation. So I'm going to send you an email and say, hey, is this relevant to you right now? Which is a great way to run an outbound campaign. But if you have this information, if the signals and the intent exists already, why not do a little bit of legwork to find them? Because we're going to send emails like this. We're going to get a 30% open rate, 30 to 40%, but in this case, 30%, 1.5% reply rate, 15% interest. But the real scathing metric to me here was 460. It took me 467 people to reach out to book a single meeting. So you can scale that up. Imagine if you wanted to book 10 meetings a month, you get a 10x that. That's quite a bit of email that you're sending out. That's quite a few. You're reaching 5,000 people just to book 10 meetings. That means there's 4,990 people that are not loving to receiving that email. Now it's probably a little bit less than that. But I'll compare that with the midbound metrics from a campaign we ran recently. So here's some relevant conversations I found about Collins Aerospace. This wasn't a perfect example. One, because I'm not an industry expert. Two, because they send out a lot of content and they have their whole Collins Aerospace team just flat out reposting. This wasn't a great example of like thoughtful engagement from salespeople. It was just, hey, I'm gonna repost. But I was able to find a couple of conversations where people were asking about things, or where they were mentioning, hey, this is something that we're thinking about, or just making thoughtful comments. And you're not likely to find people that are saying, hey, I'm ready to buy, BizAv software. Like, that doesn't happen. Maybe it happens in a very small sub-segment of the market, but generally what we're going to find are people that are following Collins Aerospace, and we want to comment on, and we want to use these opportunities to build a connection. And so we want to identify relevant conversations. We want to connect with them. And then we want to participate in the conversation. And we want to, by doing that, we're replying, we're adding them, we're adding something helpful and intelligent to the conversation. So again, this is not just copy paste a link from my website. This is not copy paste a quote. This is not saying we help with this, we solve that, let's chat. Here's my number. I did see a whole bunch of those. I saw people throwing their WhatsApp numbers in there. Oh, I do X, Y, Z. Here it is. I'm like, that's a great way to get a whole lot of cold spam from people that are just scraping LinkedIn comments for nefarious purposes. We're scraping them for good, right?
Ditto, that's us.
Yeah. Not just to send like a whole bunch of like WhatsApp and cold text messages, which I've experimented with cold text messages and WhatsApp, and at least in North America, people don't respond positively to it. But I think anything's worth a test. Just like we once tried testing out cold meeting invites. It got 100% reply rate, but they were all unkind words. Let's put it that way. It did more damage than good. Interestingly, though, it did work really well with people that we'd already had conversations with, and we're just trying to reactivate the conversations. But anyway, I digress. Participate and engage. We find the conversations. We want to add something thoughtful and intelligent and not just a sales pitch about this is what my product does. Our goal is to establish a relationship so that when we send them an email, they recognize, oh, there's that Collin person. Either they recognize the name, they recognize the brand name, or they remember the comment as being something intelligent and interesting and not just a salesperson. Now,
I was going to add, Collin, like what's incredible here is there's this human psychology of just familiarity creating trust.
100%.
And so you don't even have to that person doesn't even have to consciously remember your brand name. It's just that it's sitting in their sort of, historic memory, and that will make them more likely to reply, to open, to click through, to say yes to a meeting, right? All those things. And I think that's invaluable versus the raw cold outreach stuff. Yeah.
100% agree. I mean, even cold outreach provides that air cover of brand impressions so that when you are doing other type of marketing, you are getting some of those impressions, you are getting some of that magic impression juice. So if we're on LinkedIn, one of my favorite things to do, cat out of the bag here, I hate social media. I don't enjoy using it at all. I deleted my Facebook account years ago before it was cool to do that. I've never enjoyed engaging on it. I do enjoy sharing and I do enjoy helping other people. There's just something about I'm going to get you to scroll that it just really, really bothers me. And so I do a lot of work in my personal life not to scroll and just end up doing this because I am very susceptible to it. So one of the things I like to do is automate the connecting, automate the building of the list, automate pulling people into a email list so I can continue marketing to them, pulling people into a LinkedIn sales nav list so that I have an easier way of engaging with them. And so Phantom Buster is a tool I use for that. There's many, many other tools. You can do this by hand. You can do this however you like. I like Phantom Buster. It makes the process fairly simple, fairly easy. Just make sure that you're doing this not at a crazy volume. You can see here, I grabbed 822 profiles, not 8,000 profiles. So the way to think about using Phantom Buster is when you find these interesting conversations on, say, a brand channel or somebody, an interesting comment thread of somebody has posted something and you've got a ton of people that you want to connect with, those comments threads can be really challenging to come back to and find. And sure, you can link to them, but it's really hard to come back and say, okay, I'm going to remember to grab this link and I've got all these bookmarks that I'm going to check. And so what we like to do is you can use Phantom Buster to grab a list of all the people that have commented. You can now put them into campaigns into a tool like Apollo to send them an email, which is one thing, right? But you can also use those lists to build them into LinkedIn Sales Nav lead lists. Now, one of my favorite things to do to make it easy to not use my goal in life is not to scroll. I don't mind doing it on Google when I'm looking for something specifically, but whenever I go to LinkedIn, I find I scroll aimlessly because I'm like, oh, I saw that sales humor post and I see this post from somebody who I know. And suddenly I've wasted 15, 30, 45 minutes, not really doing anything positive. But with LinkedIn Sales Nav's lead lists, you can add these people that are part of these relevant conversations or having these relevant conversations to a list that enables you to monitor them so that when you want to go and say, work your social accounts and stay in touch with these people, you can now look and say, oh, I see Andy was mentioned in the news in the last 30 days. Great. I can also filter by people that have posted on LinkedIn in the last 30 days. So I can skip the algorithm and I can go right to where people are engaging and sharing and commenting. So I use LinkedIn to find the conversations. Well, I use Spark Toro to find the right people to follow. I use that to find the right conversations that are happening and then find the people that are having those conversations that I want to engage with. I create a lead list so that I can continually go through. And you can see I've only got 300 people in there. This is not a massive list. I know we're getting close on time here, so I wanted to share this is a midbound email that we use for events. This one is a little bit more geared towards, hey, let's have a conversation right now. But I thought I'd share it because it's interesting and you can adapt it however you like. I think we use this one for an event we went to. I believe it was SaaStr. And all of these were handwritten by the SDR. They were people that we had engaged with. I've got these Are We a Fit Call forms, they look like, postcards, but they have our qualification criteria on them. And so we pull them out whenever we're having a relevant conversation with somebody at a conference. I get my whole team to carry them around, and that and a pen, so much easier than just exchanging business cards and trying to write or remember something. So when you're looking at with a midbound, this is one example of a template. It's not the only one. The only advice I give you is don't use exactly my template, test it out. Your first version will be the worst version. So start here. This is a good baseline, but then test it out. Saw you at SaaStr. Most importantly, I noticed that it was really focused on go-to-market this year. Specifically, it was focused on everybody using AI for go-to-market. Wondering if this is part of your strategy. So pain questions. Is AI in sales something that you're focused on? We talked to some other attendees and they mentioned something about, having their sales team use ChatGPT is really challenging. It doesn't scale well. What if we could help, with scaling up ChatGPT, just as an example. So we sent not that exact message, but we got a 51% open rate, which is almost double the cold outbound. We got a 5% reply rate. 25% of those people that replied were interested, which means we cut our cold to midbound working by about a quarter.
51% open is insane. That's great.
I've seen 71, 81%. I didn't want to cherry pick the absolute best, but I've seen some very, very good ones. And it all depends on the source of the midbound.
Yeah. What's the title of this email, if I could ask? The subject line.
The subject line would have been, for this particular email, was something like, met at SaaStr.
Okay. Yeah.
Or if the person met at a very specific, talk, it would have been like Lars Nilsson's talk on blah.
Got it. Yeah. Clever.
And so, yeah. And if you are customizing this, you're going to get an even better outreach. Anyway, I wanted to bring it all together by stealing another one of Rand's beautiful graphics. And so this is an example of the midbound flywheel, right? We want to find sources that reach your audience. It could be a LinkedIn page, an influencer, a relevant group. We want to provide value that earns their attention. This is not copying and pasting our value prop or saying, hey, we solved this problem. It's engaging intelligently and helping people with the buying process, pointing them at pitfalls and roadblocks that they might run into. We want to connect with them, not just on LinkedIn, but also on email, so that we own that connection and we're not beholden to LinkedIn and the, however many emails you can send. We want to keep the conversation alive. These conversations are going to take a long time. They are not inbound conversations. They are not people that have raised their hand and say, I want to buy right now. So when we've earned their attention and we've built that relationship, the last step is to ask about their priorities. A really easy way to ask is, hey, is this relevant to you right now? Is this something that's going to be on your priorities list for next quarter, next year? These soft ask styles are relationship preserving, because you're not just saying, hey, let's do business right now. You're not mortgaging that future for conversion now. You are just saying, hey, is this something that you're thinking about that's relevant to you right now? And that is the dark side of finding demand and Rand creating demand.
I love it. Yeah, Collin, very, very clever tactics. And I appreciate how sort of respecting the potential client your approach is. That's
Thanks.
great to see.
Yeah, it came to us naturally from I mean, we've got a fairly large audience, as I do, and we have the benefit of a larger audience. And what we notice is that not everybody is ready to buy right now.
Yeah.
And if you just sit on all this marketing engagement, that there's lead scores, and there are people that will do all this fancy stuff to try and figure out, okay, this is when and where my salesperson is going to reach out. Like, you can invest in that, or you can just let a salesperson go at it, because if you have a sales development rep, they're going to do all that automatically.
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. Well, so I think we've got do we have a couple minutes for Q&A?
Yeah, a couple minutes for Q&A. Throw your questions in the chat if you've got any. I'll have a look through and see if we've got any. We've got a few requests for. Perfect. I do have a question for you, and it's more just while we're waiting for questions to come in.
Yeah.
It's more on the creating demand idea. As SDRs, I know we're going and we're trying to find demand. I guess and I don't mean anything negative by the question. Is posting on a blog post or posting on somewhere where people are going to see it, is that creating demand? Is that just an extension of finding demand? We might be arguing over terminology here.
Yeah, absolutely depends, right? So content marketing generally is often about audience building, which is about creating potential future demand. So audience building would be to say, hey, I know that, whatever, flight operations people are my people, and I want them, I only think 1% of them are actual buyers, maybe 0.1% of them. But if I can build an audience of thousands of flight operations specialists and managers and people who will never buy from us, but who still really like our brand, like our newsletter, like the content that I post, follow me or my company on social, that's a phenomenal way to create future demand through essentially word of mouth in a lot of ways, right? So it's hey, these folks, whatever, at Eyes On, like, they're doing a really bang up job. You should subscribe to their newsletter, even if you never buy anything from them. Like, you don't have to be one of their customers, just subscribe to their newsletter. Phenomenal way to build your customer base, and something that's worked for, all the companies I've been part of. So that's kind of my argument for content and social media marketing. Frankly, both of those really work with that. The same is kind of true of PR. Like, you can do PR that's extremely sales focused. You saw the launch of the, whatever, their Collin's aerospace Eyes On platform, that thing. Right. That launch marketing through PR is very sales focused. But a lot of the content that they produce and a lot of the social media that they engage with is around audience building, which is a create future demand, but also ease the sales process in the future by creating that familiarity, trust, liking behavior that leads to easy sales conversations. Gotcha.
I think the piece of clarity that explanation brought to me was, this is demand for my product, demand for, it's not going out into the market and convincing somebody that isn't problem aware that, hey, this is a problem that exists and you need to solve it. Is that a fair comparison?
Yeah, I mean, you can do content marketing, you can do PR, you can do audience building designed to, solve that problem as well. It is at your option. Gotcha. And this goes back to that, the slide that I was presenting, that's essentially know which problem you're trying to solve and put your marketing and brand investments into the right place. So if Airbnb is, trying to create, hey, did you know that vacation rentals exist? Like, they're solving the wrong problem, right? That's not where they need to be. In 2009, that was absolutely where they needed to be. And my argument would be, for a lot of folks today, if you're selling, I don't know, AI software to CTOs, you probably are doing some problem discovery, problem awareness stuff. So it's, hey, not only do we have this interesting solution, but here's the problem that it solves. Why do I need to solve that problem with AI? Because XYZ, right? And that's I think, quite different from, the later funnel stages of, oh, hey, we have this need for AI software that does XYZ. Who provides that? Where should we be going? How do we get educated on what the market options are and what the best choices are? And that's a totally different kind of content marketing.
Gotcha. I started off in sales by reading all these books on how to ask questions, or how to, the NLP kind of thing, where you're like, okay, I say these words and I can convince people to buy.
Oh,
And it was like the true, like, dark arts of sales. And this is, I didn't have great sales mentorship growing up. I had to figure out most of this. I did have a couple of leaders, and not trying to throw them under the bus. But I generally worked directly for entrepreneurs. So I was
yeah.
working for the founder, the CEO. I didn't have any sales manager that had been doing this for 20 years. They could say, hey, this is where you want to look, check this out, check that out. I was just left to my own devices. And I found all these things that said, hey, this is how you manipulate, or this is how you convince people. And what I found was that I couldn't actually convince anybody to buy. But what I could go and the way I could influence the sale was a really good discovery process that helped people understand the shape of the problem, helped me understand if there was anything worth solving there, and then making a loose recommendation. And what I found was, like, I'm not actually creating demand. I'm finding demand that exists, or I'm finding a pain, a problem, a gap between expectations and reality that exists already. I just had to find the gap. I'm not creating the situation. And so it was more about that. That's kind of where my question was coming from.
Yeah. Clever. Okay. Got it.
We've
Man.
got a question.
I think,
Oh, go ahead.
obviously I learned SEO all on my own too. So right there with you.
I think you might have done a bit better job than I did. Learning SEO than me.
Scholars are divided.
We've got a question from La Isla Digital. What are the most common challenges when transitioning from a model that primarily serves existing interest to one that already actively creates demand?
I think that getting executive buy-in is one of the biggest, most difficult challenges, because there's almost like a mental roadblock of, hey, we've been doing things this way for a long time. We just need to do them better. Your job, SDR or VP of marketing or whoever, is just to do this thing better. I want you to optimize this. I don't want you to change how we do things here. And that mindset is tough to break through. It's tough to crack. It's also critical, right? Like the way that you get a competitive advantage in any form of endeavor is to do things that other people are not willing to do, haven't tried yet, haven't thought of doing yet, have whatever, some sort of conflict, some reason that they can't do it. There's no universe in which just doing the things you've done for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years better is going to take you to a really exciting place. It's just the way the world works, right? Our economic system is set up to reward innovation and to recognize it. And that's why, that's what makes, in my opinion, sort of, at least small scale capitalism, right? Like my company doing better things. That's what makes it so interesting and fun. But overcoming that challenge, in my opinion, is about finding people who are open-minded enough. Sometimes it means starting with two things that work. One, first getting your leadership to agree philosophically that they are seeking a competitive advantage, not a slightly better widget. If you have that conversation without getting into any tactical details, and you first get buy-in of, hey, are we looking to make a huge leap forward, or are we just looking for incremental progress? And if huge leap forward is the thing, the next thing to explain is, we're going to try things that won't work. We're going to try things that will work, but we're going to try things that won't work too. And you have to set up that expectation for some failure and some success, and not knowing which ones until you try them. Another way to go at this is the competitive route. The problem with the competitive route, of course, is that it means someone else is already doing it. But if you can show, for many leaders, for whatever reason, you show them data, you show them statistics, you show them small investments that have been successful, you show them whatever, this webinar, you show them experts in the field who are talking about this thing to do. And they'll be like, no, 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 no. And then you show them one competitor that they don't like who's doing it already. And they're like, what? They're doing it. We got to do it. I don't know what it is about humans at leadership level, but sometimes it just takes, hey, you know that annoying competitor that you hate? Well, they started doing this. What? Well, now we have to do it. So you can fake it too. You can make a little thing that the competitor is doing look bigger than it is to try and get that buy-in. I've done that before. So I don't think these are gray hat, because you're taking people in a direction that they've got to go. So that's my big challenge. Collin, I'm sure you've seen others.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a similar where from the other side, where our customers don't want to do a case study with us because they don't want their competitors to find out that they're using us, because they'll do it. Unfortunately, I've had some of our most successful clients have had that opinion. And I'm like, oh, but I understand, but also, come on.
Are they willing to, if you anonymize their brand in the industry, they'll do it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But how useful are anonymized case studies? I don't know. I don't
It's
love
much
doing them.
tougher,
We've got a few where we had like a really good customer, and we get a couple others that we can't share publicly, but we'll name drop, instead of saying the name, we'll kind of insinuate that. Yeah. But there's a line between trying to,
there's a toy company that rhymes with ego, and we
yeah, exactly. I know we got a minute left here. I wanted to leave a minute for you. Tell us a little bit about Spark Toro, because
sure.
I use it. I love the tool. I love the idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I
on
appreciate that. I mean, so here's what I would say. Spark Toro is a way to do audience research. Essentially, you can search for the name, bios, keywords in a bio, like a job title or a role. You can search for a website. You can search for a keyword, and Spark Toro will show you data about the audience that visits that website or contains those words in their bio, right? So I ran the search, for example, for flight operations. So my audience uses these words in their bio, flight operations, and Spark Toro is showing me, YouTube videos that YouTube channels that are subscribed to by flight operations professionals, gender and age of their demographics, education, what websites they visit, what keywords they search for, all that kind of stuff, which can be extremely useful to quickly and accurately get a, essentially almost like a persona, right? A data-backed persona of this person's behavior. And that will tell you where to go to reach them. And then if you say, okay, flight operations people, I'm interested in them, but what about flight networking? I'm going to try and, go after those folks. Oh, flight directors, you know what? I want them too. Actually, I'm really interested in anyone who subscribes to forflight.com. Let me get them in. Great, right? So Spark Toro is really useful for those kinds of things. You can build lists in there with the data. You can screenshot it and put it in your presentation. Sometimes it's very helpful for convincing higher ups. What I would say is it is very self-service. So not an enterprise tool. Collin, you'll be embarrassed. I know you're in sales. If someone writes to us and they say, hey, can I get a demo? Which we get a few of those every day. We reply and say, I'm sorry, we're just a tiny team of 3. We can't do demos. You can watch these videos to learn more. It's a self-service thing, right? Like people can sign up on their own. It's very inexpensive, right? So BrandWatch has an audience research project that's, tens of thousands of dollars a year. It's phenomenal. It's awesome data, but way out of the reach of a lot of SMBs and individual professionals. And Spark Toro starts at like $50 a month. And there's a forever free version. We have like 70,000 people who just use the free version. Great. Use it for free. Yeah, exactly.
It's awesome. Yeah. I'm always bumping up against the limits. I'm one of those free people that's about to have to put my credit card in because I'm like, dang it, I can't get more out of this, which is it's a great way to go about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for us, it's like it's sort of a mission thing too. Like we want to democratize this information. We think that fundamentally, I mean, probably me more than Casey, but like I really hate that Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, Microsoft, they have this data and they sort of use it against us, like, us consumers, us businesses, right? And I don't think that is right or fair because this is our data. This is our information that we put publicly on the web, right?
Mhm.
Whatever websites that we put up, content that we put up, social media posts that we put up. And I believe that that data should be open, just like, Google's entire business is built on being able to crawl the rest of the internet and use that data to build a search engine. LinkedIn's whole business model is you give us all your data and then we, create this network and all that kind of stuff. But the data is ours. Like, it's ours, the public web. And so Spark Toro is really designed to make that stuff available to people, marketers, salespeople, anybody who can find it useful again. And frankly, I think it should be available. I think it should be free or low cost. So that's what we're trying to do.
$50 seems pretty reasonable. I'm ready to put my credit card details in. Rand, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you sharing with our audience how to create demand. I learned a bunch from this. I'm actually going to do a few things a little bit differently as we prioritize our marketing activities for 2024. So thank you.
Right back at you, Collin. That was great.